Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this important and joyous announcement. As you all know, my name is Kate Chisholm, and I chair the University of Alberta's Board of Governors. I'll begin today by respectfully acknowledging that the University of Alberta is located on Treaty 6 territory and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our culture, our knowledge, and our vibrant community. Before we start the official program, I'd like to welcome and introduce the following very special guests joining us here today: the Honourable Jason Kenney, Premier of Alberta; the Honourable Demetrios Nicolaides, Minister of Advanced Education; and the Honourable Doug Schweitzer, Minister of Jobs, Economy and Innovation. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us for this celebration of a very important and happy moment for the U of A.
Well, thank you very much, Kate, for welcoming us here to the U of A, and thank you, Dr. Flanagan, President of the University, as well as everybody joining us here from the Shing Institute of Virology. Thanks to Dr. Lorne Tyrrell and Dr. Michael Houghton, who's joining us, I believe, virtually today. And once again, congratulations to Dr. Houghton on having received the Nobel Prize for Medicine last year. I'm sure you're not getting tired of hearing that, probably just about every day, Doctor. We're very proud of you and proud of your contribution to health sciences here in Alberta and in Canada. The Shing Institute has, for well over a decade, been a critical part of the bioscience ecosystem in Alberta, a world-leading research institute that is seeking life-saving therapeutics, vaccines, and treatments to help people from all manner of ailments. It is a critical part of the University of Alberta as a leading global research center. And the Government of Alberta has been a key supporter of the Shing Institute since its foundation. We acknowledge and thank Mr. Shing for his generosity and sponsorship, as well as all of the donors and the U of A for its ongoing support. And I'm happily here today to announce that the Government of Alberta is renewing its commitment to the Shing Institute for Virology with $20 million of additional funding over the years to come. Sustainable funding that will help the Institute to recruit and retain world-class scientists and fund the expansion of its research capacity for the future. This is more important now than ever in the COVID pandemic context. The world realizes, Canada realizes, that we can never again be at the whim of other countries and the politics of different nations when it comes to vaccine security. After the Second World War, the world realized that the huge strategic importance of food security. Countries around the world built systems to have redundant supply of food so they were not vulnerable to famine and starvation. I think what's happened with vaccine nationalism in the past few months underscores the critical strategic need for Canada to have the capacity to develop and indeed produce vaccines and other critical pharmaceutical products for the future. As you know, unfortunately, Canada has been well behind the curve of many countries around the world in terms of the rollout of life-saving COVID-19 vaccines. By some accounts, we have been 55th in the world in terms of per capita acquisition of COVID-19 vaccine doses. And sadly, this has allowed this third and dangerous spring wave of the disease to really impose enormous costs and risks on our society. We've been in a race between vaccines and the COVID-19 variants, and unfortunately, because of the slow arrival of doses, in part as a result of vaccine nationalism in other jurisdictions, we are being hit hard, and right now the variants are beating the vaccines. The good news is that will change over the month to come. We expect to inoculate at least 800,000 Albertans, in addition to the 800,000 who have already been inoculated. By that time, we'll begin to reach a broad enough level of protection of our society that we can move forward with confidence. But in the long term, we know that we are going to be challenged by potential other variants of COVID-19. There may have to be adaptations made to the vaccines that are currently in use or are coming on stream. And there will be future contagious diseases that pose a grave threat to public health, and we must be better prepared for those in terms of biotechnology. That's one of the reasons why the Li Ka-shing Institute can play such a critically important role. And it can also be a key part of the growing bioscience industry in Alberta. This is a global industry worth well over $1 trillion in the global economy. We need to play a larger role in that. And we hope and believe that this investment will strengthen Alberta's position in biotechnology, in the pharmaceutical industry, in researching and developing therapeutics, pharmaceutical products that address the health challenges of today and the future. So once again, to Dr. Tyrrell, Dr. Houghton, to their whole team, and to Mr. Flanagan, and everybody here at the U of A, thank you for your world leadership. Albertans are proud to partner with you in this cutting-edge research that will demonstrate that Alberta is contributing to helping to save lives around the world. Thank you very much, and look forward to, I guess, Minister Schweitzer now.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you to everyone for being here today. This is really an opportunity for us to highlight the amazing work that's been going on here at the Li Ka-shing Institute under the leadership of Dr. Tyrrell and Dr. Houghton. As the Premier has noted, you never want to kind of overuse, but a Nobel Prize winner doesn't happen every single day in your community. So having a Nobel Prize winner here at the University of Alberta is just a huge success for this institute and the cutting edge research that's being done here. And building on the Premier's comments, earlier on in this pandemic, there was a huge amount of pressure when it came to personal protective equipment. And AHS was ahead of the curve in acquiring PPE, but that didn't mean that they stopped there. They made sure that they invested in domestic production of masks here in Alberta. Earlier on in the pandemic, there was an immense amount of pressure around ventilators. They went out to companies here in Alberta that had 3D printing technology, and they commissioned, researched, and developed ventilators right here in Alberta that are available to AHS. And when it comes to vaccine nationalism, which has become the issue of the day for the last few months here in particular, we never want to be put in this position again as a province and as a country. And the developmental research that's being done here at the Li Ka-shing Institute is critical for us to developing out our strategy here in Alberta, as well as in partnership with other provinces and the federal government, to make sure we're never put in this position again as Albertans and as Canadians. So again, as many of you know, we've asked for proposals. We've received 17 proposals here from companies in Alberta, nationally, internationally. We're doing our homework right now to make sure, again, that we can develop out that developmental piece of it, as well as the manufacturing production of vaccines in Alberta, to make sure, again, that Albertans are never put in this position again where we're completely reliant on other countries around the world for our own health and security. And with that, I'd like to invite Minister Nicolaides up here to make a few remarks.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Minister Schweitzer. Premier, thank you very much for today's important announcement. And my acknowledgement is as well to President Flanagan, Dr. Tyrrell, of course, Dr. Houghton, other members of the Li Ka-shing Virology team, and of course, Board Chair Kate Chisholm. Thank you so much for being here. Before I dive into my remarks, I want to give a quick comment and a statement of acknowledgement and appreciation to President Flanagan, Board Chair Kate Chisholm, and the entire leadership and executive team here at the University of Alberta for their tremendous efforts during this pandemic in moving to a new online delivery system in a very challenging time, but at the same time allowing our students to continue on with their academic pursuits with very little disruption. So my appreciation to both of you, your leadership team, and to all members of the faculty and staff here at the University of Alberta for making that happen and working through this challenging time. I'm very grateful, of course, to the Li Ka-shing Foundation for their vision and faith in Alberta. As we know, over 10 years ago, Dr. Houghton and members of his team began a journey which started with the creation of the Institute right here in Alberta. Historians may one day look back and see this as one of the greatest decades in the history of this research, and it happened right here in Alberta. Within 2 years, Dr. Houghton and his team had developed a vaccine for the virus causing devastating liver diseases and liver cancer. And last year, Dr. Houghton, Drs. Alter and Rice received the 2020 Nobel Prize for their work in the discovery of the virus that could mean a cure for hepatitis C. This marks the first time in 97 years that a scientist from a Canadian university has received the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology. Dr. Houghton is not only changing lives and changing the scope of care for tens of thousands of generations of people, he's also a catalyst in elevating this province. And Alberta's government recognizes that our post-secondary institutions have a critical role to play in helping to elevate our province. Indeed, the important work that occurs here and the importance through research and innovation needs to be amplified. And in working with President Flanagan and other members of our post-secondary community, I'm confident there's more that Alberta's government can do to unlock the entrepreneurial and innovative spirit and nature of our post-secondary institutions. There's more to come and more to say on this in the coming weeks, including later this month when I hope to be able to unveil Alberta 2030, a 10-year strategic plan for our post-secondary system that will help unlock more entrepreneurial and innovative potential within our system to create stronger results for Albertans. In conclusion and in closing, before I invite President Flanagan to come say a few words, once again, my congratulations to Dr. Houghton and Dr. Tyrrell, the entire team here. I applaud you on the excellent work on behalf of students and researchers here and the global prestige that you've obtained and the tremendous strides you're making in the health of people around the world. Once again, congratulations, and President Flanagan, look forward to your comments as well.
Thank you, Minister, for your generous comments, and a very warm welcome to you, Premier Kenney and Minister Schweitzer. We're delighted, of course, to welcome you here to the University of Alberta, and thank you for this very important investment in the Li Ka-shing Institute for Virology. As you all know, Alberta continues to undertake extraordinary measures to stop the spread of COVID-19, and seldom in our history have vaccines and research that underpins them have featured so prominently in our public consciousness. And we've learned how vital the end-to-end production of vaccines in Canada could be, from basic research to development and testing to in-house production. And today's investment will help us get there. We have a strong foundation of talent and expertise right here in Alberta. Last year, Dr. Houghton received Canada's first Nobel Prize in Medicine since the discovery of insulin in 1923. That the U of A is now home to a Nobel laureate is thanks to long-term public and private support. And there were really three major factors that drew Dr. Houghton to the University of Alberta. First, visionary and long-term funding from both the provincial and federal government, matched with a record-breaking gift from Mr. Li Ka-shing. And finally, the tireless work of Dr. Lorne Tyrrell, the Li Ka-shing Institute's first director. And long-term support like this is vital because this kind of research that changes lives can take years of hard work to develop. And Dr. Houghton and his colleagues spent 7 years unlocking the genetic code of hepatitis C before they could create the screening tests, reduce transmissions, develop treatments, and produce a hepatitis C vaccine that is now ready for human trials. And with the events of last year, we all have a renewed appreciation for how valuable that vaccine will be. Indeed, it has the potential to save millions of lives and could ultimately save the Canadian healthcare system over $1 billion. So Dr. Houghton and Dr. Tyrrell exemplify the remarkable work coming out of the University of Alberta. And it's that kind of work that will enable Alberta to play a lead role in vaccine and therapeutic research, development, and production moving forward. The kind of work that will solidify our expanding biotech sector as one of the very best in the world. With the economic recovery from COVID-19 on the horizon, U of A researchers represent a key economic opportunity for our province. The pharmaceutical and therapeutic sector is projected to reach $1.5 trillion worldwide in the next 2 years alone. Our successful vaccine can produce self-sustaining product royalties in excess of $300 million over its lifetime. And Alberta has the talent to fuel its burgeoning biotech sector. With the $20 million investment today in the Shing Institute for Applied Virology, the University of Alberta will continue to provide critical research and development leadership and innovation needed to build that sector and attract and retain highly qualified graduates to our province. So once again, my heartfelt thanks to the Government of Alberta for your support, for investing in the University of Alberta and capitalizing on the unique expertise that we have here. The remarkable things that we can achieve when universities, governments, philanthropists, and scientists work together. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce the founding director of the Shing Institute of Virology and distinguished university professor, Dr. Lorne Tyrrell.
Thank you very much, President Flanagan. Premier Kenney, Minister Doug Schweitzer, Minister Demetrios Nicolaides, Board Chair Kate, President Flanagan. This is a very special day, and we're very grateful for your announcement of $20 million in support of the Shing Applied Virology Institute. It's tremendous recognition of the research that has been developed at the University of Alberta. And I want to take just 1 second to introduce three other people who have very strongly supported us. There's the Dean of the Faculty, Dr. Brenda Hamelgard, the Chair of the Department, Dr. Matthias Goethe, and Walter Dixon. Without these people's support and encouragement, it's very hard to do the work that we do. I just want to say that the drug that was on the market, remdesivir, which is the first drug licensed for COVID, has had its mechanism worked out by Dr. Matthias Goethe. He is a leading international scientist in the Shing and chair of the department. It is tremendous recognition for Michael Houghton and the winning of the Nobel Prize this year for medicine for his discovery of hepatitis C. Let me say that hepatitis C is another pandemic. It's not seen as the same type of pandemic, but there are still 400,000 people a year that die from hepatitis C. The World Health Organization is trying to eliminate hepatitis C and has a plan to eliminate or markedly decrease it by 2030. And critically important to that was the development of hepatitis C drugs. It was the development of diagnostic tests for hepatitis C, and if we can get a vaccine for hepatitis C, which is still a major unmet medical need. Michael Houghton started this whole industry on hepatitis C with the discovery. The World Health Organization has listed the greatest threats to humankind, and they did this in 2019. 6 of those threats were infectious disease of some type. Antimicrobial resistance, which the government is supporting as well, is another major threat. But 5 of them are viral illnesses. And we've seen the impact of a viral pandemic on the world as we've seen COVID, what it's done over the last year. It has touched everyone, from health to economics to social factors. The university has built a strong basis in viral and immunological research even before we had the institute here. But building on that basis, in 2010, with the tremendous support of Mr. Shing and his foundation, and support from the government of Alberta, we established the Shing Institute of Virology. The same year, we were very fortunate to recruit Dr. Michael Houghton, a world-renowned virologist, as his focus has always been on research that benefits patients. His discovery made blood safe, and we'll show you, if you like, a cabinet with the first vials of that product. The University of Alberta and the Shing Institute responded very rapidly to the pandemic of COVID-19. In the first year, university scientists have brought in successful grant competitions, bringing in nearly $30 million to the University of Alberta. With the strong focus of bringing benefits to patients through research, Dr. Houghton directs the Applied Virology Institute, and the support from the Alberta government at this time is critically important to future success of the Applied Virology Institute. And successful projects will improve health, they'll help to diversify the economy, and they'll provide jobs for our graduates from colleges, universities, and technical schools. It is very important that we have a way to have receptors built in the community that will help retain highly qualified people in the province and in Canada. And your support of the Shing Applied Virology Institute will help us in that goal. I thank you very much. It's been extremely important to us. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce and pass over to Michael Houghton. Michael, are you ready?
Thank you, Lorne. And I must say it's a very nice meeting and gathering to participate in. I'm very grateful to all the thanks and good wishes from the government, the University of Alberta, friends and colleagues in Alberta. It's been a great experience, and thank you for all of your good wishes and thanks. I would like to echo my strong thanks to Premier Kenney, his ministers, and the government of Alberta for their continued support of our work in the Shing Applied Virology Institute in the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry here at the U of A. We are contributing to the prevention and treatment of COVID disease, but as Lorne mentioned, there are other pandemics besides COVID that are also very important to curtail, and we have been working hard on them in the Applied Institute. These are caused by the hepatitis C virus and also group A streptococcus bacteria. Together, these two pathogens, one a virus, one a bacteria, have killed many tens of millions of people around the world, and so are tremendously important to address and to stop this tremendous disease burden. We have a wonderfully dedicated and talented team of young scientists here in the Institute, and they, along with key international partners, are close are close to delivering vaccines into the Alberta clinics for testing with vaccines against these two infectious diseases. On the therapeutic side, we have a very talented group of chemists in our institute that are close to a cure and a novel antiviral for cytomegalovirus. Cytomegalovirus is a serious virus infection, especially in transplant patients that are immunosuppressed. And so we are very encouraged by the progress that our chemists are making in this area. Along with other leaders at the University of Alberta, we are exploring novel ways to try to treat Alzheimer's disease, cancer, and other forms of serious liver disease. Our mission is to help patients and their clinicians. And in the process, if we're successful, which we think we will be, as a result, we build up and enhance the biotechnology industry. They're all very challenging goals. They take a lot of time and a lot of funding, but over the next few years, thanks to the continued support of the Alberta government, we are aiming to succeed in at least one of these major areas of medicine. Not only will this benefit medically citizens of Alberta and Canada and the rest of the world, this will also help to enhance a thriving biotechnology industry here in Alberta. And we want to help it to become a global leader. And I have experienced this biotechnology emergence in the UK, and then afterwards in California, where in both countries I was part of the biotechnology scene. And so I've seen how it works. I've seen how you need strong science, which we have in Alberta at our universities in Alberta, Calgary, and at our secondaries. And with government support like we have, and with the will to make patients better and to prevent disease, I'm certain Alberta can become a really globally competitive site for biotechnology. And of course, that in turn, as Lorne said, will employ our highly qualified personnel and will bring a lot of income and revenue to the province and to the country. So it's a great pleasure to be part of this activity in Alberta. I've really enjoyed my 10 years in Alberta, and I'm really looking forward to the next few years to see the fruits of our labors in the past. And thank you again to the government, the provincial government. Thank you very much to the University of Alberta. You've all been wonderful. And a big thanks to Lorne, obviously a good friend of mine and a fantastic collaborator and supporter. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Houghton. We'll now go to the phones for questions. We'll do 2 questions each, either 1 question, 1 follow-up, or 2 off the top. Operator, can you please put through our first caller?
Thank you. The first caller is Bill Kaufman, Post Media. Bill, your line is open.
Yes. Hello, Premier Kenney. I'm just wondering.
Go ahead, Bill. We can hear you.
I'm just wondering, Premier Kenney. I know that there are some critics of your enhanced COVID-19 business benefit who are saying that this is coming too little, too late, and the qualifications for it are too high. What would you say to that, sir?
Well, first of all, we feel for all of those businesses that have been affected by restrictions. They've borne the brunt of sacrifices that have been necessary to contain this virus, to protect our healthcare system and protect lives. We acknowledge that so many businesses have gone through, and small business owners in particular, have gone through a time of incredible challenge and anxiety. That's why we've provided over $500 million in direct cash support through these small and medium-sized enterprise relaunch grants through the first 2 versions of that, and we're now rolling out the 3rd version that we announced a few weeks ago. At that point in the pandemic, we saw that there was a very small fraction of businesses that had been disproportionately affected. Businesses like dance studios and gymnasiums and others that had been closed for the better part of 10 months. So we decided in the 3rd round to focus financial support on those hit hardest, and that explains the criteria to qualify. But I did indicate on Tuesday in announcing additional difficult public health measures that we will be coming forward quickly with a 4th direct cash package for businesses affected by this week's restrictions. And Minister Schweitzer, I anticipate, will be coming to Cabinet later this week with a proposal in that regard. So we hope to have that help moving as quickly as possible. But we've also provided billions of dollars of other support, including paying for half the WCB premiums for small and medium-sized businesses. That's several $100 million in support. As you know, deferrals through tax abatements and fee abatements, but also participating with the Government of Canada in the Commercial Rent Assistance Program. So collectively, it's billions of dollars of support, and more help is on the way.
Bill, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, some of the recipients or possible recipients are wondering why the provincial government has increased the qualification threshold from 30% of lost revenues to 60% lost revenues.
Again, Bill, we addressed that when we launched this third tranche of financial support for small businesses about a month back. And again, we did that in order to focus the aid on those businesses who had been hit hardest, because just to put this in a bit of perspective, back in the spring, a year ago, about 15% of Alberta businesses were either closed or largely suspended because of public health measures. Until this week's measures, that was down to about 1%. But within that 1%, we had businesses like dance studios and gyms that had been largely impaired for the better part of a year. So we decided to focus the additional support on those businesses hit hardest.
Operator, can you please put through our next caller?
Thank you. Dean Bennett, Canadian Press.
Thanks. Afternoon, Premier. I'll give you the 2 questions off the top. It's to do with the dissidents in the backbench. Question 1, the thrust of their argument is if you won't ease the restrictions, will you at least go back to regionalizing them? Is that something you would consider? Question 2 is where exactly is the line? I understand the dissent is accepted, but if any of these, anybody in your caucus either breaks the health rules or counsels or endorses others to do so, would you kick them out of caucus?
The answers are yes to the first question and yes to the second question. On the first question, the answer is yes, that we would, sorry, I've now forgotten, what was the first question? Regional approach, yes. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So we have looked very closely at applying restrictions or accelerating easing of restrictions on a regional basis. As I announced on Tuesday that we're putting together a caucus working group to work with the Minister of Health on that. We acknowledge that at some points throughout the pandemic, we've seen some regions with very low or no COVID cases and significant spikes in other zones. The challenge has been that, of course, the virus moves very quickly, and people move as well, and the virus moves with them. So we don't want to end up in a situation where we hermetically seal Albertans into their own local area, not permitting travel. That would be, I think, pretty extreme. And so there is going to be, the virus is going to move through the population. And what we have seen through much of the past, I would say this calendar year since January, has been that the relatively highest case count has actually been in rural communities, much more so than in Edmonton and Calgary. On a per capita basis, we have seen more outbreaks, more pressure coming to the healthcare system from rural areas. And that's, but I don't say that as a judgment, it's just a reality with which we've had to cope. So the notion, there is a view amongst some that we could just sort of carve out rural areas because they're less densely populated. And I understand the population density issue, but at the end of the day, we have to look at how fast the virus is moving in certain populations and in certain communities. That's what's informed our policy approach. But we know that we're getting to the end of this thing, thank God, with the vaccines. I laid out on Tuesday what we see as the path forward based on moving towards community immunity. We believe that by the end of June, we should see effective protection for about at about 70% of the population between natural immunity and vaccines, at least the first doses. And so we believe that we can, once we get past this spring spike, we can move back to relaxing measures, and we may do it on a more accelerated basis in certain local areas. On the question of, I made it very clear on the second question to my caucus this afternoon, this morning, that while we accept a diversity of opinions, and I totally respect the obligation of members to represent their constituents, that's how parliamentary democracy works, that the government caucus could not tolerate any member counseling people to engage in civil disobedience or to break the public health measures. And I think that's well understood by our team.
Operator, can you please put through our next caller?
Don Braid, Calgary Herald.
Premier, what happened yesterday was quite remarkable with the release of that note from 17 people finally. What is your reaction to that? It comes at a crucial time, perhaps tends to diminish respect for measures overall. It's clearly a complete rejection of government policy, your government's policy. Typically things will happen if that sort of thing happens. What is your overall response to what they did and how much harm it might have done?
Well, Don, I don't think democracy is harmful, and I don't think debate is harmful. We live in a vibrant parliamentary democracy where people have a diverse range of views, particularly on something as important as the best response to COVID. There's no point in pretending that there is not a range of passionately held views in our society. I've always encouraged that debate. As I said on Tuesday, and I've said repeatedly, I hope that debate is based on facts. The facts to the government are very clear. We are in the midst of a very dangerous last COVID surge that could threaten lives and could potentially overwhelm our healthcare system. That's why we have brought in additional tough new measures this week based on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer. And that's why the government is prepared to go further if necessary to protect lives and the healthcare system. We've always sought to do so in a balanced way to minimize the negative effect on our broader social and economic health from public health restrictions. I think what those MLAs were doing was giving voice to those concerns about the negative, the very real negative consequences of restrictions. And I respect their responsibility as elected representatives to articulate concerns like that. But at the end of the day, the government must decide how best to protect lives and the healthcare system based on the best scientific advice that we get. That's exactly what we'll do and will continue to. One more point, Don, it's unfortunate that in Canada, elected representatives speaking their minds is somehow hugely newsworthy. I will point out to you that in the United Kingdom, about 75 to 90 members of the government caucus in the Westminster Parliament have consistently publicly opposed the government's COVID response, arguing that the restrictions have been too severe. And indeed, they voted against the government on a number of motions. I think we should learn a little bit from our mother parliament about how better to tolerate diversity of opinion in a democracy, while governments, of course, at the end of the day, have the responsibility to do the right thing.
And Don, do you have a quick follow-up?
Just that they also said, the MLAs, that you haven't been listening to them. The highest levels of provincial government simply hasn't listened to what they're saying. They're indicating very clearly that they don't think they're getting their message across and not getting the results they need, which is also, in the Canadian context, Premier, after your long experience in Ottawa, you know, is a very unusual thing to do. Any response to that?
I believe my cabinet colleagues would confirm that we've constantly been listening to Albertans, listening to members of the legislature. In fact, we recently have, Don, you've been around long enough to remember the caucus consultation process that existed in the 1990s. We've actually recreated that through what are called member policy committees. And in this instance, the Minister of Health presents potential policy changes on the pandemic to a committee made up of, and in fact, most MLAs participate in this. So there are many opportunities for engagement. We just had a 3-hour caucus meeting this morning, as we do every week. And of course, this was the dominant theme of discussion. And we take on board all of the views, but at the end of the day, it is a moral responsibility of the government to protect lives and to protect the healthcare system for which we are responsible. And we will take every measure that is necessary based on the best expert medical and scientific advice to do so.
Operator, can you please put through our next caller?
Carlisle Fizette, CTV.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my question. Similarly, on the last lines of questioning, I'm just wondering about the lead up to the letter. I know you seem to indicate that you knew something like this was coming on Tuesday based on your comments. I'm just wondering how the conversations leading up to Tuesday's announcements went with those members of the legislature, and if that, you know, knowing that this was coming, pushing back back to step one until after Easter had to do with that.
Well, obviously, no, it had nothing to do with the timing. We received advice from the Minister of Health and the Chief Medical Officer on Tuesday morning about additional measures, and we've acted very quickly whenever we've received that advice. As I said last week, the part of the challenge here is non-compliance with the rules that are already in place, and so it is a challenge to add yet more rules in a context where a lot of people have stopped following the current guidelines and measures. So having said that, our Chief Medical Officer and her team came to the conclusion that more action had to be taken to stop chances for transmission. And that's why we decided to take those actions right away. But I just mentioned in response to Don Braid that we have a caucus consultation process, and we presented the proposed measures that we announced on Tuesday to members of the government caucus. They shared their views. There were mixed views. And as you know, some members disagree with the current state of restrictions, but the government has a responsibility to do the right thing, and we will continue to do just that.
Carlisle, do you have a follow-up?
Just a similar one on when it comes to the regional approach that several of these MLAs are calling for. Some more details on what you're looking for and how that may be implemented, what needs to happen?
Sure. So at various times over the past year, we've had sometimes regional differences in the application of public health measures. For example, if a particular health zone had fewer than 50 cases, active cases per 100,000, that region was eligible for less stringent measures. At some points when we saw huge waves in Calgary and Edmonton, we applied particular measures to the big cities. And we have looked at this from many different angles about how we could come up with a sensible regional framework that does not create public confusion and which recognizes regional differences. But quite frankly, right now, this surge is happening pretty much everywhere. And one of the problems with the regional approach in the past has been arguably that the health zones, there's only 5 of them, are kind of too large themselves to reflect real local differences. So we have a category called local geographic areas. I think there's about 230 in the province, and they are too small. because you can't have like 18 different policies in Edmonton or Calgary. So we've looked at different ways of kind of carving up the map to come up with sensible regional boundaries. And right now, not a single region in the province would qualify for a less stringent COVID restrictions. So look, here's what I would say to folks who want a regional approach or who are upset about restrictions. Folks, we are towards the end of this thing. We just have to get through the next few weeks. I completely understand the frustration, the anxiety, and the impatience. We all share it. Nobody likes these restrictions, me least of all. We all acknowledge that the restrictions have had a very real cost for many people. We want them to end as quickly as we can safely do so. Every day we are vaccinating more people. We hope to be vaccinating upwards of 250,000 in the next week. We're setting up our rapid flow-through clinics for vaccination this Friday. We're expanding to pharmacies. We're expanding the access to register for vaccines. We're doing everything we can to get doses out as quick as we can. But it takes 2 weeks for the vaccines to have a protective effect, a little bit longer for more elderly people. And we're just not there yet. I wish we were there. I hear folks say, what about Texas and Florida and these U.S. states that have opened wide up? I wish that we had half of our population inoculated like they do. But we didn't have the same access to supply. That was beyond the province's control. So my message to folks who are frustrated is, so am I. We're all frustrated. But we just need a bit more patience for a few weeks to get through this. And getting into complexities about carving up the map 15 different ways is not going to stop this wave that, if it runs out of control, could overwhelm our healthcare system. Let's keep our eye on the ball, protect the healthcare system, protect lives, and in a couple of months we'll be past this.
We have time for 2 more questions. Operator, can you please put through our next caller?
Paige Parsons, CBC.
Hi, this is a question for the Premier, and it's about some of the vaccine program changes you announced Tuesday that affect pharmacies. And we've been hearing from some pharmacies now, including the Alberta Pharmacists Association, that they were caught off guard by the announcement that it was going to be publicly announced that AstraZeneca would be available in stores, as well as that they would be opening up for walk-in appointments. And it's created quite a bit of chaos for some of them because they don't have AstraZeneca yet, or they're concerned about crowds and lineups forming, even as cases are rising and capacity is supposed to drop in stores. Why weren't pharmacies given advance notice of this?
Okay, a couple of points. So 2 weeks ago, we held a news conference with the head of the Alberta Pharmacy Association and with the president of Shoppers Drug Mart Canada to underscore that Alberta is leading Canada in partnering with local pharmacies to distribute the vaccines. Much more convenient way to administer the vaccines for a lot of folks and get out into rural areas, et cetera, more easily. So I think our cooperation with pharmacies and that association has been exemplary to date. But if they were caught off guard, it's partly because the Alberta government was caught off guard when we received 175,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine last Thursday, when they were supposed to arrive this Monday, Tuesday. So we received a huge quantity of AstraZeneca doses about 5 days before they were scheduled to arrive. And as soon as I learned about this, I'll be blunt, my instructions to the health department was, we're not going to keep those stuck in freezers just because they arrived early. I want an action plan by Monday to get those out as quick as we can. So I'm sorry if the short notice has been an inconvenience for the pharmacies. I hope they understand in turn that we've constantly had to adapt and adjust to the ever-changing schedule of incoming doses. This is one example. So the option would have been just to keep them in the fridge and the freezer and give the pharmacies a couple of weeks' notice to set up for AstraZeneca distribution. This is an emergency. We need to act accordingly. If that means rapid action, that's I think what Albertans expect of all of us, including our pharmacy partners.
Paige, do you have a quick follow-up?
Yes, and so with the walk-in specifically, just because we're going back to phase one, we're wanting to reduce capacity in stores, and pharmacies are needing to do a lot of pre-screening and paperwork to check people's eligibility. What is the message for them as they try to, also manage perhaps an influx of people trying to get in quickly to get appointments?
Well, look, we understand there's going to be logistical difficulties, and we also understand it's going to take the pharmacies a bit of time to set up for walk-in vaccinations. We know, for example, that they're going to have to hire security to assist them with that, and perhaps additional staff. So we're working with the Pharmacy Association to roll all of that out as smoothly as possible. Let me just give you a forewarning. I'm sure there will be some bumps. I'm sure you folks in the media will jump on the problems as they emerge, and that's part of your role. But I do believe that the pharmacies will continue to be great partners, overcoming those logistical challenges. But here's the bottom line. We need to use every resource at our disposal to get the jabs in people's arms as quickly as we humanly can. I mean, if we could get those pharmacies to stay open 24/7 to support us, we'd do that. So we don't want doses sitting on the shelves, and the pharmacy partnerships are a key way of speeding up the vaccine program as quick as we can.
Operator, can you please put through our last caller?
Thank you. The last caller is Audrey Neveu, Radio-Canada.
Hi, Premier. Thank you for taking my question. I want to hear you in French about something you said earlier about the 17 MLAs who are opposed to these health restrictions. Donc, M. le Premier ministre, les 17 députés disent avoir essayé de se faire entendre pendant des mois là, de votre gouvernement, mais en vain. Et vous avez dit hier que vous reconnaissez qu'il y a une diversité d'opinions dans votre caucus, mais eux semblent vouloir avoir davantage. Qu'est-ce que vous allez faire pour répondre à leurs demandes?
Nous vivons dans une démocratie et évidemment, les parlementaires élus ont le droit et la responsabilité à refléter les convictions, les opinions de leurs commettants. Et je respecte le rôle des députés représentationnels. Mais cela étant dit, le gouvernement décide les meilleures politiques pour protéger les vies et le système de santé, nos hôpitaux. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle, cette semaine, selon le conseil du le Dr Hinshaw, nous avons pris les mesures supplémentaires de santé publique pour retarder la croissance du virus pendant cette vague de printemps. Alors, comme j'ai dit, il y a une diversité des opinions dans la société de l'Alberta et partout au monde de meilleures façons de répondre et d'équilibrer la protection de santé publique avec les droits et libertés et l'impact économique et social des mesures de santé. Alors, il n'y a pas de point d'ignorer ce débat, ça existe, mais en bout de ligne, il faut que le gouvernement prenne les mesures nécessaires pour protéger les vies et nos hôpitaux.
Audrey, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do, maybe in English and in French, but aren't you scared that this fracture will last even when COVID is over? Est-ce que vous n'avez pas peur que cette fracture au sein de votre propre gouvernement, votre propre caucus va se poursuivre au-delà de la pandémie?
Non, pas du tout. Écoutez, je suis fier d'être leader d'une partie d'un groupe et d'un gouvernement qui est focusé sur nos engagements électoraux, mais COVID-19 n'existait pas dans les dernières élections. Nous n'avons pas eu un débat avant maintenant et nous apprenons les meilleures façons de répondre pendant toute l'année dernière. Mais je suis entièrement confiant qu'à la suite de COVID-19, comme j'ai dit auparavant, l'été de cette année sera le meilleur été dans l'histoire de l'Alberta. Dans ça, je suis certaine. Et je crois que dans la vie normale des gens et la vie politique de la province, on aura l'occasion de relancer effectivement à la suite du 1er juillet. Thank you very much.
That concludes our news conference today. Thank you, everyone.